Hey everyone, this is Bo. I'm trying a little bit different format in this video. I'm just going to jump right into it instead of making you watch all the rough cuts and milling and weighting and milling and gluing. We're just going to get right into where the build action starts. In this video, I'm building a small planter stand for a dresser. Now I can give you the inspiration here, maybe. You can wrong way. So you can kind of see it there. It's a just a little multi-level stand that you put a plant on. And so what I have here is I have the feet stock here. They're just squares, 1/2 by 1/2. Haven't cut them down yet. And then I have the two shelf pieces. So here's the upper tier, the small circle. If you can make that out, maybe. Something like that. You can kind of make it out there. Little 8-inch circle on top. And then the lower piece is a 10-inch circle here. And now I'm about to cut the circle on the table saw, which, to be completely fair, I've never tried before. So I made this I used my micro jig sled here and drilled a bunch of 1/4-inch holes in a straight line from the edge of the sled. And I'm using a small 1/4-inch dowel in those holes, and then I drilled a 1/4-inch hole in the center of the bottom of each shelf. So we're going to give this a shot and see how it goes. Hopefully I don't die. All right, so I successfully cut some circles out. That was good. No danger. No lost fingers. I do recommend, or I shouldn't say I recommend. I prefer to cut the majority of the waste off on the bandsaw first, just so those big pieces aren't falling next to the table saw blade and getting shot across the room. So this went pretty well. I can use that in the future to cut circles. The next step was to make the legs. That go on the bottom and then between the two tiers of the shelf. So what I've done is I have a piece of 1 3/8 by 1 3/8 block. It's made out of 2 glued together, that I've then cut to 1.5 inches long. Then I found the center on each one by just connecting the corners and then drilling a 1/4-inch hole that will later receive a dowel to hold it in place. Now I'm attempting to cut a taper on all 4 sides of this. I initially thought maybe the table saw, maybe the miter saw, but I think with how small these pieces are, that's not a good idea. So I've chosen to use the bandsaw here and have come up with, I don't know, a simple little 5-minute jig to help me do this. So piece of plywood screwed to the miter gauge, and then I've super glued a couple blocks in it that act as references for the legs. And so I'll cut little wedges out of each leg on all 4 corners, kind of having to piece it back together as I cut each one. But yeah, I have screwed up a couple of these, so I've been putting a circle on one end. That circle always faces the saw blade. As you can see, I've got a couple oopsies here. One where I cut 2 one direction and 2 the other direction to make whatever this shape's called. And then I did 3 out of 4 right on the next one and still screwed up the 4th one. So you can see what a correct one looks like here, a little kind of like a tall pyramid. And they're not perfect. Doing the bandsaw and kind of trying to hold the offcuts onto the piece again is leaving them not exact, but I don't think that's the end of the world. Make some more legs. All right. So after cutting the tapers on the feet, if I can get these off, cut all those out on the bandsaw, and then I took them to the oscillating belt sander and just cleaned up all the bandsaw marks. From there, I cut some dowels to length. I drilled a 3-inch deep hole in each of the legs when they were square, and then I laid out and drilled a 3/8 inch deep hole in the bottom of the bottom tier here. And so then I could connect the legs to the bottom piece. So a dowel inside here, a hole there, boom. There's the bottom base. One thing I wish I would have moved them a little, maybe further out to the edge. I put them, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch inboard. Maybe should have moved them out another 3/8 of an inch or so. But anyway, so there's the bottom of the stand. I was just working on now the upper tier of the stand. Same way, I drilled 3 holes in the bottom of the upper tier, put the legs on it, and now I'm trying to position the upper tier on the lower tier of the shelf. And so what I've done is I've got it roughly centered. I put some pencil marks on the top surface of the lower shelf here, and now I'm going back and I put a dowel center. You can see that there's a dowel center in this one leg. I only have one 1/4 inch dowel center, so this will be a little bit of a iterative process, but it'll be all right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to line all these legs. Oh, cool. Try to line all these legs back up. So not everybody's going to start there. Something like that. Okay, about right, there. There, I'd say. So we get some pressure here. Make a indentation. And there we go. There's one hole made. So after I make that indentation, I come and I drill a 1/4 inch hole, and I'll insert a dowel in this hole, which will then sit in the bottom of the leg or the spacer. And then I use a dowel center on the next leg, and then I'll drill that hole, put a dowel in there where there'll be now 2 dowels installed, and then I'll install the dowel center in the 3rd hole, make an indentation, drill that hole, and now all of them are lined up. After looking at the plant stand, I figured a chamfer on the bottom would add a nice little touch. So after putting it together and looking at it a couple times, I ended up scrapping these tall, skinnier legs that were tapered. Even though it did take a fair amount of time to make these, it just didn't look right when it was all said and done. So those are going in the garbage. What I ended up doing was just taking a small rectangular piece or a square piece of stock here and kind of rounding the outer edge so it lines up with the outer radius of the shelf pieces, and that's what I'm going to use as spacers instead. This gives it a better, much more proportional look than the tall legs. So most of the construction here is done. The little legs and risers are finished. Holes are drilled for the dowels. Now I'm going to just sand and glue it together, and then put some finish on it. So at the end of the day yesterday, I was able to glue on the little feet onto the bottom of each tier of the shelf, and I was able to get it all sanded up. I also thought, hey, I might as well get some color on this while I'm at it. And I was doing some samples, and I was picking out colors and different stains and whatnot, and finally found a color that kind of matched what the person wanted. And I got out, the gloves, started applying it, but I wasn't paying very close paying close attention to what type of stain it was, nor did I read the instructions on it. I've used this water-based stain before. When I grabbed it yesterday, I didn't really think about it, just thought it was some standard oil-based stain. and started getting a rag, just kind of slopping it on all the surfaces, and was going to come back and wipe it off. Well, since it's water-based, it dries super fast, and also turns into a complete disaster if you don't really flood the surface and then I'll wipe it off quickly. So I made a complete disaster out of these things. So what started out as a simple day project is now leaked into day number 2, where I will be stripping all of this off and doing it again. Yeah, oh well. The joys of woodworking. And even my better judgment told me just to use dye and water. But I was like, I'll use some stain. Haven't done that in a while. You know, what could go wrong? Ugh.
After finding the right music to sand to, I bust out the random orbital sander here, and with 220 grit sandpaper and knock off all that stain. And as you can imagine, it's not perfect after doing all the hand sanding and things like that, but it's pretty good since the color I'll be putting on this is also dark. Speaking of applying stain, I am not going to use that water-based stain this time accidentally. I'm using some oil-based stain from Minwax called Jacobian. Starts with flooding the surface. I think I let that stain sit on there for 15 minutes maybe, and then I come back with some shop towels here, and I got a paper towel in one hand to kind of hold it in place, and then removing the excess with the other towel.
Alright everyone, so I'm about to spray some finish on the 2 shelf pieces. I've got my Fuji sprayer, set up over in the corner, got the gun right here, got a filter ready to go, got my poly ready to go, got my little spray table set up so I can hit all the edges there. And yeah, I'm going to spray some polyurethane, and then after that we'll get this thing assembled. So that first coat of polyurethane has dried. It's been about 2.5 hours since I sprayed it. It feels all nice and dry. One kind of tried and true method to make sure it's ready to be scuffed up is as you are sanding, if it's clumping up your sandpaper and there's little white balls and dots everywhere, it's not ready to be sanded yet. So as long as it's dusting up, as I like to call it, that might be a technical term. But as long as it's dusting up, it's ready to be sanded. So we're just scuffing it to get it ready to accept the next coat of polyurethane, so it has something to adhere to. Followed up with a quick vacuum here. And then a quick wipe with some water. Make sure I get all that polyurethane dust off there. Alright, give that a couple minutes to dry off, and then we're ready to spray the next coat. Alright, so after 2 coats of polyurethane are dry, I'm now moving on to the very last step in finishing. For pieces that are maybe touched a lot, I like to put a little bit of paste wax on there and buff it off. I don't know why. I think the sheen of paste wax is nice, as well as the tactile feel of it is also nice. So I'm going to add a bit of that, buff it off, and then I will connect the 2 pieces together. My original plan was to use dowels to hold these 2 in place. Once I switched the leg style, or the spacer style. I'm not able to use dowels anymore because they don't line up, so I'm going to be using just screws coming from the bottom up into the upper tier legs.
So I start by applying a coat of wax here, just using a towel or a rag. Let that dry and develop a film. Come back with a clean towel and buff the wax off. Finally, moving on to assembly here, I'm getting the upper tier located on the lower tier and then using some clamps to hold it in place. I have to flip it over to drill and screw the two pieces together. After I get it flipped over, I use a combination of drill bits here, one a little bit larger to get through the first couple layers and then one a little smaller for something for the screw to bite into. And here it is, all wrapped up. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.